Hey friend, Michelle Dennis Evans here. Welcome to Creator to Write, where we turn blank pages into finished work. You'll be encouraged, inspired, and learn practical strategies to move forward with your writing, whether you're just starting out or ready to level up your craft. And if you're looking for ways to support your creative work with an additional income stream, I'd love to chat with you. Please reach out on social. Now for today's episode. The beautiful author I have with me today is the lovely Joanne Berthelsen. Welcome to our show.
Hi, Michelle. It's lovely to chat to you here.
Certainly is. We are going to cover a lot today. So tell me, what first sparked your interest in writing? Did you always want to be a writer?
That's pretty close to the truth, Michelle, because I was a total bookworm growing up. I got glasses when I was about 6, and I was always curled up reading a book. And I used to think even then, wouldn't it be wonderful to be able to take people on a journey to some other world where you're completely immersed in this different place and time. And but I just thought it was a huge dream, who could ever be a writer? And then I didn't remember this, but one of my old school friends pointed out to me that at the end of our high school year, when I was 17, I wrote in our school magazine, this was in Brisbane where I grew up, I want to be a writer. So I must have still wanted, or must have wanted to write then. And then my whole life took a whole different journey, married, 3 children, and so on. And in my 30s, when my children were still at primary school, I joined a writers group here in Sydney, and I had one little story published, but then that all disappeared again too. And I did crazy things like going to theological college in my late 40s, and then on into being part of a church pastoral team. And then in my late 50s, God clearly called me to start writing. So for me, it's been a late in life writing journey. I don't know if I have time to tell you how that happened, but maybe I'll give you the quick version. I was visiting a friend in Turkey. We're sitting near the Mediterranean Sea, and I was reading my Bible, and I had just finished on a church pastoral team, and I really didn't know the next thing God had for me to do. And I wrote in my journal, Lord, while I'm away, I really want to hear the next thing you have for me. I'm listening. And I was reading Isaiah, and seriously, the next verse I came to in Isaiah 42. I just read there before about the old things have gone, the new things, that new things have old things have passed away, and that's how I was responding in my journal, saying I know those things have gone. But the very next thing I read was, and I'd said to God, I'm listening, God. I read, hear you deaf. Look ye blind and see, who is blind but my servant, and deaf like the messenger I send. You have seen many things but have paid no attention. Your ears are open, but you hear nothing. And my friend who was with me said, oh, what do you think God's saying? And I said, oh, I didn't hear any harshness in that. I knew that God was saying to me, come on, Joanne, how many times do I have to show you? Go home and start writing. And it was like in that moment, God gave me permission to do
Mhm.
the thing I'd wanted to do for all those years. So that
Love
was the
it.
start of my writing journey. That was end of 2003. In 2004, I started writing. So
Beautiful.
20 over 20 years ago now. So,
I love how God speaks so personally to us. So we hear. He knows the way to speak to us. I love that. Yeah, so we can
it
hear.
was just such an
We're ready.
amazing thing. I
We're
wrote
ready to
all of
listen.
the next year, or completely kept writing the whole year, and out of that came my first 2 novels.
Uh-huh.
Mm.
So it's been a lot of your personal journey that's influenced your writing then, has it?
Oh, absolutely. In different ways, I think, on sort of two different levels. Um, Firstly, I've written 7 novels and 4 non-fiction. In all of those novels and clearly the non-fiction, really what inspires them or the main themes are God's amazing love and grace to each one of us. And so that's what I experienced in just overwhelming way when I became a Christian. I was 15 in year 10. someone invited me to a camp, and I can still remember to this day feeling when I heard the speaker one night, his face just shone with the love of God. And I remember thinking as a 15-year-old, that's what I need. And I remember being overwhelmed with the realization that, oh, I actually matter to God. Oh, Jesus is real, not just that person I vaguely heard about. And oh, he knows me, he loves me. And that just completely turned my life around. And then later in my 30s, when I just was finished a very exhausting I was a high school teacher, just finishing a certain role there. God, I probably don't have time to say again, but God gave me a clear picture of Jesus holding me as a baby and looking down. And I believe this was, I saw a man and I saw a baby, and I knew it was Jesus and knew it was me. And he was saying to me, wow, Joanne, wow. And this absolute love was shining from Jesus' face in this picture. And I knew that he was saying to me, well, all your achievements, that's wonderful, well done, but that's not what matters to me, because I loved you just the way I created you to be before you could achieve anything. So those huge, huge experiences in my life, of course, I want that to flow out through my novels and in my nonfiction. So on that level, my personal journey has really inspired me. And then very definitely my personal journey inspired me. I've written two memoirs. One was called Soul Friend, which
Yeah,
was just my,
beautiful
this
book.
was my first nonfiction actually, um, with Riser Press in Queensland, which was then called Even Before Publishing. And that's just conversations I had with my lovely older friend and mentor, Joy. And then a little bit later, I wrote Becoming Me, Finding My True Self in God, which was more the whole of my life with little reflection questions for others to think about their own life. So my journey definitely impacted those two books because that's what I share in those, especially in Becoming Me, where in my life, because I came late to things, in my 40s to theological college and on into pastoral ministry, and then late to writing, it was like the layers in the Russian doll idea that they were coming off, and I was becoming the person God truly wanted me to be, that little person inside. So, yeah,
I think
personal
that's
journey,
everyone's
huge for
journey.
me.
I kind of feel like that's everyone's journey. We start this person, this little person, and then with everything that happens to us in life, we become layered, and then God wants to break it all off again to become the person that He wanted us to be to start with.
Absolutely. We learn not to impress others or not to have to measure up to something, and then it can all come out what God has put in us. So,
Yeah. So you've
yeah.
spoken about your friend and mentor, and what else has community played a role in your writing life? How has community impacted you?
Again, that's been so important on lots of different levels for me. Firstly, when I first started writing, there was no Omega writers around. I knew one other Christian author, but I found when I wrote my first novel, I had 5 manuscript readers, and a couple of them were more critique partners than readers. And I really took on board everything they said, almost too much, because I tried to please them all and then realized in the end it was my book. But, that was hugely helpful to me. But all along, Amiga Writers, the Christian Writers Group, I remember going to early conferences up in Brisbane and Queensland, and years ago, probably back from 2007 onwards. And I remember presenting workshops as time went on, but that was all important. In fact, my last two books, actually, Steph Penny, who's part of Omega Writers here in Sydney, her little endorsement, she endorsed this book, and her little endorsement has ended up on the cover, much to our surprise, or part of her endorsement. So, and Carolyn Burke, who's part of Omega Writers, there's an endorsement from her in there too. And then again with God Moments, Jeannie Wood from down here, her endorsement ended up on the back cover. So yeah, very much friends I've made through Omega Writers. But also I've had two different Australian publishers. I had one for my first five novels here. Then I had Riser Press in Queensland, and then I self-published two of my books. And now I have my lovely UK publishers, Authentic Media. But the editors I've worked with there have all been helpful, sometimes drastic, but I learned from them and from their feedback. And if you have a publisher who's paying to publish your, covering the cost to publish your book, you have to listen. And so I learned to do that. And but my current publishers are just so beautiful at listening to what I want to do with my book as well. So it's a lovely cooperative thing. And the final thing, probably a lot more I could say about people who've supported me along the way. But one way that's particularly important for me, because I do a lot of speaking. Last year I had 35 book events, not all speaking, but mostly. A lot to community groups and some to churches, but a lot of community groups out there, seniors groups and probus clubs and the like. So I knew that I needed prayer support because otherwise it's a bit of a lone journey, just hopping out and speaking at places on just off my own bat, so to speak. And so a lovely lady who used to live near us told me years ago, it was in about 2009, that I needed a prayer team. And so that's what I got. And currently I have 10 women who pray for me wherever I speak. They don't know about today because this was short notice, but normally they would. And they also pray when I had key things happening in my writing journey itself. So I think that's the reason I've kept going for 20 years, that I've had this group of women that I've just collected along the way at the different churches we've been at. My husband's been a minister all our married life, and just people I've connected with. And I just love that. Sometimes I might be driving to speak somewhere or show my books or something, and I'll get a little text from one of them that says, "Thinking of you this morning, God bless and watch over you." And I'm thinking, who wouldn't want that, you know? So
Beautiful.
that's a key part of how community has helped me, for
Yeah,
sure.
and such an encouragement to you as well, having that group all around you. Yeah, beautiful. So tell me, Joanne, have you ever felt judged for what you write?
Oh, that's that's I laugh about it now, but I probably probably felt quite defeated at the time. But oh yes, I could say I have several times over those years, but I can just one early one came to mind when my very first novel came out, and to be honest, I didn't know that was called Helena. That was published in 2007. And to be honest, I had no idea what I was doing then, really, because there was not much around to help. I didn't mention before, too, with people that have helped me along the way, I did do lots of courses at what was called the New South Wales Writers Centre here. It's now called Writing New South Wales. And so I had people there who helped me as well. But when Helena first came out, one of my good friends said to me, "Oh, yes, it was okay. But the main character," she said, "oh, she's too good to be true." And that kind of floored me. But it was probably true, I'd say now, looking back. Although it's funny because that very first novel of mine is the one that has sold the best out of all my books, all of my 11 books so far, because it was a great story. It was about a Czech migrant lady who we knew in our church, and she'd passed away, but we knew the bones of her story, and it was just tragic, but also a gripping story, a real life story that I had to turn into a novel because she had no living relatives here in Australia and so on. So I fell into writing novels. So that was a judgment, but at least it helped me to make my characters be more realistic from that time onwards. So it was a good lesson to learn. I think as time went on, my seven novels are very, very faith-based, if you like to use that term. God is very much at the forefront of them. And sometimes that's too much for some people, but it's just how I feel I have to write because I really want that love and grace of God to speak through in my novels as well as my nonfiction. So I felt judged a bit at times. Oh, should I write differently? Should I tone down the Christian content in my books? But that's just not me. So I think I have to stick to what I'm called to write in that. And then the final way I guess I would say my writing is judged is I have funny adventures speaking at community groups, and I'm constantly amazed that I'm actually invited there because I offer 3 talks usually, and they can choose. And they're just general talks. One is about my writing journey, right from the heart, an author's journey. That's just one example, but I gently say things about God at times. I just pray and I wait for that little prompt and I judge the audience and just think, what can I say here? Even just the fact that my husband's been a minister all our married life, because that's acceptable in our community. And so I do that, but I always have my book table there. And so there are my novels. I usually put my novels at the front. But then clearly on my book table are books like Becoming Me, Finding My True Self in God. And then my very last book, God Moments, clearly it's about God, 101 Little Lessons for Life's Journey. And I see people pick them up and look through, and sometimes they're delighted to see something about God on the table, if that's where they're coming from. But mostly I think they're just puzzled and they look and they pick it up and might put it down again and so on. But that's, so I guess I'm judged on that level. And some people would write me off in these community groups as this strange person. But at the same time, I always make sure what I speak to them about is as best I can do. I have the talk about my writing journey. Another one about travel, because I've traveled to Turkey 5 times. And then I have a third talk about the perils and privileges of public speaking. That's just a funny talk I give, but I make sure that that's entertaining and, something that they enjoy. I do my best to honour God in what I produce. And my little prayer team prays for some good God conversation at my book table afterwards. And I don't think there's been one time when I haven't had some sort of really interesting conversation at my book table later. All of that to say, yes, I do get judged often about my book content when I speak, but that's okay because I'm there, aren't I? I've been invited there, and I still enjoy doing that for sure. Yeah.
Can you brush it off quicker now than you could when you first started feeling that judgment?
I think so, Michelle. That's a good question. I think so because I just smile, and some people. Recently, I didn't realize at one club I was at that the little blurb about me would have gone out in their newsletter, and they must have said that I had a theology degree, which I do have. And I think that put people off. And some lady came up to me and said, "Oh, I'm going now." And I thought she just meant that she was leaving for something or other. But apparently, one whole table left because they did not want any God content. Well, I'm always very careful, very sensitive to what I say because you have to honour what you've been invited to speak about and what the club wants. But then they told me later that the speaker convener bounced up and said, "Oh, that's one of the best talks we've ever had. Can you come back?" So you just have to ride those things and smile nicely and just know that I know who I am now in God. I think over the years I've learned to I'm pretty good at doubting myself, but a lot better now than I was. And I think we have to just know who we are in God, and you're not going to please everyone. So, yeah,
Mm,
takes a
yeah,
while to learn that sometimes.
yeah, it's a journey. Hey, it's a journey getting comfortable in that.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. And has there been anything in your writing career that you've had to unlearn or anything that you've had to just push to the side?
Yes, and that really is what I was getting at just a minute ago then with the self-doubt,
Mm,
because I think writers in general are pretty good at doubting themselves because we're often so introverted and thinking about all these things that are going on inside us and so on. But I clearly remember writing what became my first two novels. I wrote my first five novels actually sitting at the end of our kitchen table in our old house. We've since moved. And that was the only place in our house. We still had a couple of children living at home. And I would look up from my laptop and I could see my face reflected in the glass doors of a china cabinet at the other end of our kitchen. And I believe the enemy really used that because I would hear this little voice in my head saying something like, "What are you doing here, sitting here writing? What on earth are you doing here? You left a perfectly good ministry position, at a church where you were needed in that area. It was a very needy, low socioeconomic area. You left that position where people needed you. Why don't you go and do something useful?" And so on and on that voice would go. And I realized sort of the tricky nature of it because that was something my mum used to say to my sister and me when we were growing up. "Oh, why don't you go and do something useful instead of sitting there reading a book?" And so I think the enemy knows how to pick those little points in your life and really bang it home. And so I had to learn. I learned eventually. Seeing my reflection in the other thing the enemy said was, you could see all my grey hair even then, it reflected. And I've heard that voice say, "Look how old you are. Who'd ever want to read your books?" That sort of comment. And so I had to learn to I literally put my finger in my ear and just sort of move in my mind and listen to what God had to say about me. And then when I did that, I felt that God was saying to me, "I'm so delighted, Joe, that you're doing right now exactly what I called you to do. Keep going, you know." And so it was overcoming that self-doubt. And yeah, but look, I think we're always going to be fragile people as writers. And look, you just have to, really look to God and just keep being strengthened through it all. As I said before, you can't please everyone. And we're all different as writers. None of us reads the same. We all have different taste in books. And so I think God had just strengthened me over all those years just to accept that and just to enjoy my own writing journey. And I can't believe that here I am still with book number 11 out. So, God can strengthen us to keep going as long as He gives us the things that He wants us to say out there in our books. Yep.
Congratulations on getting 11 books out. That's a mean feat to have that many out. And with those lows or with the judgments, there is also highlight. What's your highlight reel? Best,
Oh,
best
look,
time.
I've had so many lovely highlights.
Mm.
I was actually reflecting, this probably sounds a funny thing to say, I'd probably choose two. Although having speaking as well as writing, I've had some lovely audiences, some that have been very hard, but all of those, it's a privilege. But one highlight I'd speak was through Omega Writers, and I think it was the last online conference we had. There's another one coming up soon. I think it was that one that somehow I received the Barnabas Award, and on that conference, someone had nominated me for encouraging other authors. And I nearly fell off my chair. I got such a shock because for me, that's a joy to help other writers because I've been helped in my journey so much, and especially my prayer team. So I do read lots of other people's manuscripts and edit them. And I meet with another lovely Sydney writer here, and she's on her publishing journey now, or two of them actually. And it's a delight to see that. But that was just such a lovely surprise. So I did enjoy that. But the other thing I think is finding my current publishers, I would say. And as I said, that happened through a Zoom interview with Dinah Harris, the general manager of Authentic Media, when I was at a live Omega Writers Conference, a face-to-face Omega Writers Conference at Kingscliff. about 3 years ago. And so I'm forever thankful for that, for finding my lovely UK publishers. So for me, I can't put it into words because my two Aussie publishers were right at that stage in my journey. I enjoyed publishing two of my books myself, and they still sell really well, those ones. But with the UK publisher, I said to my husband, I just feel respected at this stage in my journey. It's lovely to feel that respect, isn't it? That people listen to you, and I in turn, of course, listen to them and what the sort of books they want to produce. But yeah, it's like a lovely gift to me at this stage in my journey, having the publishers there that I know they will listen to me at any time. So yeah, I feel very privileged.
Yeah, and you've brought it right back into community again, the importance of the Amiga writers in your
Yep,
writing
yep,
life. And we're not meant to be islands, we are meant to be connected and in community. So as authors, it is so important for us to come together quite
yes,
as often as we can. Yeah.
yes, exactly, Len. I don't make all the meetings here, but I do my best because I remember that when I started, there was not this help around, and now we have all the Facebook writers groups, Christian Writers Down Under, Australasian Christian Writers, Amiga is online as well. We have blogs going, and none of that was happening even only 20 years ago in 2007. So I think we have to utilize all of those things to our advantage. Yeah,
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
including podcasts and YouTube, Michelle. So
Well, including the Created to Create show.
absolutely.
Well, thank you for joining me today, Joe. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Thanks for hanging around till the end. Please remember to leave a review if you've enjoyed this podcast and share it with a friend. You never know who is wanting to get those words out of their head and into a book.